Hooty hoo. Yeah. Yo.
Yeah.
Bust the flow for you real quick.
We're about to let it flow.
We got Richie here on the ones and twos.
Yeah.
Hey, that's something you can talk about too, bro. All right, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
To our viewers, we want to welcome you back. I'm your host, Luis Perez, a.k.a. Guicho Breach. And if you know, you know I am that demon killer.
Yes.
And my co-host right here.
Case, your favorite Tennessee representative.
And before we get started, we want to give a shout out, of course, to all our sponsors. Casey?
510 Architecture and Design. Our boy Daniel Martinez, holler at him. He's got your back like chiropractic. And Hernandez Drywall.
We always laugh.
They do big things.
Yeah, Hernandez Drywall doing great things.
And our big sponsor?
And our big sponsor, it is the Choosing Hope Foundation.
Yes.
Representing, and so just want to let you know a little bit about the foundation. It is founded firstly was founded because of prison ministry, but it's not entirely just rooted in prison ministry. Also, we work with parole. And,
parolees, where you at?
Yeah, parolees representing, and then also homeless folks, battered women, recovery from addiction, alcoholism, all those things. That is what the Choosing Hope Foundation is.
Choosing Hope work for me.
Focus on helping people, getting them reestablished into society and helping them in the church, getting them established, preaching Christ, all those things that we know and we're familiar with.
Come on.
And so giving a shout out to the Choosing Hope Foundation.
Doing big things.
If you want to give to this vision to help, as you know what we do through the podcast and through what we speak about, you can always go to lifespeakspodcast.com, correct? And there's a give online button there. You can also become a sponsor.
For
whatever
great
it is,
cause.
Yeah, and everything that you see here in our podcast, a lot of these people have benefited from the Choosing Hope Foundation,
yes.
And so you can be a part of that vision. And of course, our church, the Potter's House Christian Fellowship Church of the Greater Randolph area,
GRA, stand up,
GRA, and so representing as well a big supporter of the foundation, because the foundation is facilitated through the church, and everything we do is faith based, and so we just want to give a shout out to everyone that's involved, everyone that has given, all our sponsors. We greatly appreciate them, and any other further sponsors, anyone that wants to be a part of that. If you just want to give a donation, you can give that as well, and it goes a long way to what we do through the foundation, and working with prison and parole and things of that sort. And so with that said, today we have a great privilege and have a great show lined up for you. We have my real good friend Richie Valerio, I've known him for many years. Actually, he was saved when I came into the church as an 18-year-old years and years ago. He was already saved in the church, believing God, and I've looked up to him for many years, seen his ministry start when he pioneered, and then went established a great work for God there in his city, and now he is an international evangelist for our fellowship. And I could say so many things, and I can just go on and on and on, but the reason why he's here tonight is because he's got a powerful testimony, and I think his testimony is one of those that someone could listen to, can watch, can hear, and can say, man, if there is hope for someone that comes from that dynamic of life, from that perspective, from those odds being against you to that degree, there has to be hope for me. And I mean, Pastor Richie, I've heard him preach his testimony before. He preaches his testimony all over the world, and it always comes and carries great impact. And so we want to welcome him today. Thank you for coming, Pastor Richie. Thanks for being here with us.
Oh, it's a privilege to be here in this awesome ministry.
Awesome. And so one of the things that I like to do in the podcast is, before we get started, moving forward with everything that we're going to talk about, I want you to go back just as far as you can, at the beginning, the inception of your life, and tell us, what you remember, what was life like, and what began to produce that which became who you were.
Well, they say sin will always cost you more than you were prepared to pay, and it'll keep you longer than you were prepared to stay. And so some things never change. And so my mother fell right into that trap. My biological mother made a decision to go to they call them get-togethers or a backyard party. And so, of course, she tells her parents, my grandparents, I'm going to be at so-and-so's house because they like her. And she knew she wasn't going to be there. She was going to be somewhere else at a party. And when I say some things never change, what I mean by that is even back then, where there's girls, there's going to be guys there at the party as well. And so one young man takes it upon himself to put something in my mother's drink. And as a result of that, he ends up raping my mother.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm a product of a rape. And one of the reasons I share that in my testimony is because a lot of people in church are mad at God for things they had no control over. So my mother made a bad decision. And as a result of that, I'm the product of that. And so that came with big consequences in the sense that she's pregnant with me. A spiritual transaction had already occurred while I'm in the womb, meaning the spirit of rejection, hatred, and bitterness has already been imparted into my little heart by the time I come out of the womb and the doctor spanks me and, okay, we got a healthy baby boy. Physically, yes. Spiritually, no. And so she keeps me there, I want to say about 2-3 days, with her, and she's looking at me and she says more along the lines where I love him, but I can't keep him.
Oh, wow.
Every time I see him, I'm going to be reminded of that ugly day. And so she gives me over to my grandparents who by then adopt me and raise me as their own. And so during that time frame, as they're raising me up, it's time to begin to put me in school, elementary school. I had a lot of anger issues. People wonder where do anger issues come from. They normally have spiritual roots. And so we're there. The hardest day for me in elementary school that I can remember was career day. Little boys and girls would stand up. My dad's a plumber. He's an electrician. And I would stand up, say, well, my grandfather, he served our country. He retired from civil service and so forth. But as a small kid in elementary school, I could remember not knowing God, but being mad at God. As I looked at the other kids there in the classroom, it's like, why does she have her father? Why does he have his father? What did I do that I don't get to have my own father? And so when we're out there doing things that go against the word of God, we don't think of those consequences. So here I am, a young kid, already mad at God and already having anger issues at that time. And as a result of those anger issues, I would get into a lot of fights in school. And so there starts the calling, Mr. Valerio.
So I mean, I want to kind of just backtrack a little bit. So I think one of the things that is very important to note before we start moving forward is how volatile. We talk about our lives being miracles. Your life's a miracle. His life's a miracle. But the fact that you were even kept. That in and of itself, because there's always been this, especially back in the days, I can imagine, and I've heard this, I've actually, talked to people about this, where back in the days, things like this happened. It was like, abort the baby. Like,
yes,
there's no, abort it, don't live with that, reproach, with that, that hanging over your head. And so, I think the odds of, like if there was ever like, well, the odds are against you. It started at a very, very, very early stage for you, because your life was teetering on that place where it's like, do we keep him, do we not keep him, do we give him a chance at life? And thank God, through the grace of God, you were born. How do you remember, like, as a child, do you remember processing that? Not as an older kid, but like a smaller child, like, did you think your grandma was your mom and dad, your grandparents? Or did you know that you had a mom, but she just wasn't in the picture when you were a small child?
Oh, I understood I had a mom, but she would never really come around to visit.
Okay.
And so my biggest issue was, the same, going back to, my friends in school, they had their parents, their parents were younger than my grandparents. And so that was where the anger would begin to build up.
So how old were you at this time with the anger starting to manifest now?
I think I noticed it more between like the 4th grade and the 6th grade.
Okay.
Did you ever know your dad at all?
No.
Like he never got caught? Never?
No.
Did your mom know who he was?
She says she doesn't. She just said, 'cause of how she was violated and raped and things like that. She says she doesn't. And so, I mean, haven't been able to get anything otherwise.
And your grandparents, were they
That's
were they like
that's a blessing.
Did they
man.
try to give you a good, like, were they trying to give you a good upbringing? Were they're really trying to make you feel accepted, included into the family? Was it kind of like, we already raised our kids, now we got to raise this little kid?
No. They actually, I never went without. They treated me as their
Praise
own.
God, that's awesome.
The bigger miracle in that part of my life was my grandfather was my biological mother's stepfather. So we're not even related by blood.
Oh, wow.
So when they make the decision to adopt me, he gave me his last name and he raised me as his own.
Which is the Valerio.
Valerio.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Oh, praise God. So he raised you as, to you, that's your dad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so as you begin to move forward in your life, did your mom ever begin to be more included into your life, or it just continued very distant like that as you continued to grow older?
As I got older, she would be real distant. Very few visits, I'm guessing maybe like 1 visit, maybe 2 visits in a year and a half or something like that. Very, spread out.
And as you're getting older, how are you reasoning that? Like, how do you reason that as a younger, maybe like before you're a teenager? How do you reason that reality? Like, well, why does she want nothing to do with me?
And so the thought would, when you're not with your friends, doing travesuras and things we're not supposed to be doing, it's an escape. But when you're by yourself, was I not good enough? Why didn't she want to keep me and things like that?
Did you understand at a young age that you were born out of a rape?
At first, I wasn't. At the very beginning, I think when I got that part out of her, because many times when I would ask her about it, she would change the conversation on me real quick. I think it was after high school. Rachel and I had gone to go see my grandmother. She was sick already, so she's getting ready to pass. She's in the hospital, and my biological mother was there. And there were some words exchanged between my wife and my mom. And then so out of that, my mom got upset. And so I told her, okay, let's go outside. We're not going to do this here. And so she's already wired up and upset, and she's wanting to talk, right? So as we're outside, so why don't you tell me who's my father? And then that's when she just said, hey, I don't know.
Spilled it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It came out there.
What were your feelings of that? I mean, how,
I remember, as she's telling me this, I don't know if that's the truth or she just doesn't want to tell me. And so, Rachel tells me, listen, just learn to let it go. I mean, if she knew, she would have told you by now, because you've been, even as a young kid, asking and nothing. And so, yeah, that's when she spilled all the beans there.
Okay. And so you mentioned in your list, you're saying anger issues and then fights in school. So as you're a small child, what is fueling the anger? What is the thing that you are focusing on that fuels that anger?
For me at the time was living with my grandparents, not having my father. My friends, they'd play ball with their dad, things like that. Now, my grandfather adopted me. He raised me as his own. I never went without. But he couldn't do things that other fathers were doing with their kids. Yeah. So that was part of it.
So
I relate to that.
What's the other part of it?
The other part was okay, am I not good enough? So if my own mother didn't want me, I began to think, well, maybe God doesn't want me either. Because up until this point, I don't know anything about God. I know we would go to, CCD classes, Sunday morning mass, things like that. But there was never any conversion, no change, no nothing.
Was there ever, and I mean, I'm asking this from my father's perspective because I know, how much my kids, my boys and my daughter, which, I mean, I'm sure you can relate, how much they need the I love yous, the hugs, the
Yes.
kisses. How was that dynamic in your life being raised by your grandparents?
Actually, it's interesting you would say that, because there were times where I would go to hug my grandfather, and he wasn't very affectionate. So, of course, I had to deal with, no, not right now.
Or
Quite a bit.
yeah, like the cold shoulder when you were
Yes.
trying. What did that? I mean, I know what it. I've never shared my testimony in this kind of format, but that's the way I grew up. I know what it did to me. What did that do to you?
It was like another stab in the back or in the heart in some ways, in the sense that first I get rejected from my biological mother, and that I don't want to keep him, but I'm going to leave him with my parents so they can raise him. But then the ones that are providing for me and caring for me, when I just wanted a hug or something like that, no, not right now.
And the reality is, I think what people don't understand about that, and I mean, it's one perspective. I don't know what's your perspective on that. I mean, Casey. I mean, Casey lost his dad when he was really young. But from your mother's perspective, I mean, was there a lot of affection and hugs like that?
No, from my perspective, my mom, whenever she was around, yeah, she would, show us some love and stuff. But she was in and out of jail a lot throughout my life. So
the reason why I'm asking was because, like, I remember what that did, like what that would do to me as a child, because you can't help but love that person, right? You can't help but they're like your parents, like they do everything for you, so you have this affection for them, you have this love for them, and you can't help but want to be close. You can't help but want to hug them. You can't help but all this stuff, and they're just kind of like,
Right.
And then you're like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what's not working out? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that fuels the problems that we deal with.
Yes, that is so true. I can tie that into the spirit of rejection, having experienced it from my mother, and then also from my grandfather. And then I just remembered also at one time, we were at Pastor Benny's office. And so one of the issues that came up on my behalf was that, every time I try to hug my kids, they kind of like brush me off. And then so Pastor Ben asked, so when did that start? And so I had to go back to the young days where, my mother, rejection, and then my grandfather would do the same thing to me, like brush me off. So it's like when I'm trying to show affection, they didn't want me to give them affection. And so that session with Pastor really helped us a lot, in the sense that they didn't know that I had already experienced that. And so here they are doing the same thing.
But since you're, and I mean, I'm not trying to harper so much on this point, but I think it's very helpful for people to understand, because like I see how much my kids need me to hug them and kiss them and do whatever, and they're brats. Our kids are brats. They still do whatever they got to do, right? Because they're kids. Yet they still have this thing where it's like they need that from you, and to help people understand, like, it's critical, and I mean, and you look at it from the perspective of having a parent and not having that, not being able to have that.
Right.
But I could imagine someone like Casey that doesn't have a choice because his dad's dead. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
How that would affect someone, where it's like, to help you understand the severity of it, it's like your children need hugs and need kisses.
I would like to have that.
Well, and that's my point. I'm thinking to myself, like, can you imagine being a child and wanting a hug and a kiss from your dad, but you don't have a choice? Your dad's dead. Right. You know what I mean? And then you don't get it from your mom, and then, but you need it. And I can tell you, I can say as a father, dude, these kids need that severely. But here's my question, Richie. So as you're dealing with this issue of how they're kind of like push off in a sense of your affection towards them, where you think that came from that, or is it just the fact that, was it something in you that felt that way?
Wow. I think it's just me longing, like, okay, I'm trying to do my part, to show affection. I'm proud of you, things of that nature.
Because you raised them up that way,
Yes.
showing them affection.
Yes.
They just weren't receiving it.
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the painful part. Well, at least for me, but they didn't know what I had been through up until that point. They didn't know that I've already experienced that.
Okay. And did you ever, so in that session in counseling, they found out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And did the dynamic change?
Yes.
Okay.
Slowly but surely, yeah, it began to change.
Okay. And so I think this is kind of like one of those points that I think would help a lot of people is, me and my dad didn't have a good relationship for many, many years. And I remember growing up, like, I just wanted to be close to my dad. Like, I just wanted closeness, could not achieve it. You know what I mean? And some people are of the mentality of, like, what's too late now? And I'm like, no, like, I'll take it even now.
For real.
Like, I would take it even now. Thank you. You know what I'm saying? And me and my dad are pretty close now.
Do you know why your grandpa would, he was just kind of like that?
Well, my grandfather, like I mentioned, we're not even related by blood. So he was my biological mother's stepfather, and he never had any children of his own. Uh-huh. So now that, we're grown, we're saved, things like that, I'm wondering if he was dealing with some issues himself.
Of course.
And
okay.
so that's how I brushed it off.
Which that's the way it normally transpires is, from me speaking with people and counseling people is, well, you don't understand, I have my own stuff going on. I was dealing with my own stuff, and they produced this kind of environment and things of that sort. So fights in school.
How often did you fight in school?
Well, some of them didn't count because it happened during athletics, I would say probably on the record, I would say maybe about 5, between 4 and 6, depending on what was going on.
Did it release something in you when you did that? Did it make you feel better? Or is it kind of like, dang it, I'm not getting nothing out of this?
For a short time. And then it would add up in the sense like, man, they're going to call my granddad to come, have to sit in the principal's office and this and that. We're going to have to suspend them and just different things like that.
What would your grandfather do whenever he'd come?
You had to ask, right? Well, the first time it happened, he said, so did you win? I said, yeah, I got him. And then so after that, he goes, yeah, you can't be doing this, because it's going to affect your future and things like that. So he would give me wisdom, but at that age, I had a severe case of itis, right? Okay. So he doesn't know because, he's way older than my biological father would be. So he doesn't know what's up. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
And how old were you at this point? I mean,
I'm guessing 15, 16.
Okay.
So probably freshman, sophomore.
Okay.
Oh, so you actually throwing some.
Yeah,
punching.
But you got to let them start it first.
Yeah, that way.
Yeah, self-defense. Yeah. I feared for my life.
So, where does the martial arts come in? I know a big part of your testimony is you used to be a kickboxer.
Yeah, the martial arts started when I started getting in trouble in school. Okay. This is becoming a habit or whatever, and so they got together, my grandfather and my grandmother. And it's like, we should put him in a karate school, right? That way he can vent and release all that anger and frustration. So that's how that started. And I normally tell people, people would say that's a good idea. No, that's a bad idea because they teach you how to, throw punches, not get punched, kick, how not to get kicked, things like that. And so I normally don't recommend people get into that because there's the other side of it that, in my opinion, is demonic for that reason. Okay. Because you have like a hairline trigger. So you're just waiting for something to happen. And so the two that were probably the one where I was like really nervous or scared happened in the cafeteria. So we're there and this guy's talking a lot of smack. And I say that in the sense that I wasn't going to do anything because he needs to do it first so I can say I have witnesses. What scared me was what was going through my mind, which comes back to what you've learned there in the karate school. So you're not thinking of just defending
yourself.
Yeah.
You're thinking about killing somebody.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, so eventually you become successful in this whole martial arts thing. I mean, you begin to...
Yes, in the amateur ranks, it was the bitterness, the hatred, and all that helped me to excel. Because for me, it was an opportunity to do what I wanted to do in the sense of, hitting on people and not get in trouble for it. So that was like an outlet for me.
Yeah.
So whether I won or lost, it didn't matter. You know, I didn't have any issues going to school with a Band-Aid over my eye or you know, black eye or anything like that. It's just
You wasn't scared of your own blood.
And I've seen pictures of you holding trophies and medals and stuff. I mean, was this like something you were pursuing? Like eventually you pursued that, and then we're kind of like, or was it just at the moment it just happened that you succeeded at that?
for me. I mean, when I started, I think started getting involved more seriously in my freshman year, but I had already started maybe like my 6th grade year, something like that in elementary school is when I started doing that. But for me, it was originally just an outlet. And so once I got into high school and I started pursuing that, that's when they said, I think if we put him in there for money, he'll do good. Right. And so back then it wasn't like UFC style fighting. It was more traditional kickboxing. So back then, the main event guys would have been like Bill Superfoot Wallace, Billy Blanks, and people like that. But in that, it's like there's a lot of politics that goes in with that. You know, how can you physically beat a guy and he still win the fight and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And I also got schooled as well, too, you know.
So it didn't become like a focus of your life. It was just something you did at that moment. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, you weren't pursuing it like to go pro or anything like that.
Well, I was making some money, you know, not like what everybody makes today, obviously, right? You got to, you know, work your way up. But my misconception was, this was my way of thinking, if I can win a world championship, that'll fix my problems that I have, right? And so 86, 87, where they're in California, was able to win a championship there. I think I kept it maybe like 2 months, 3 months, something like that. But I remember the disappointment after the fight that night. So after the fight, you have the party after the fight, and then you have the after party for the after party and all that. So everyone's happy when you win, you get bonuses, etc. And then when I go back to the hotel room, I should be happy. I won. I have the strap. You look at yourself in the mirror, and I looked at myself with disgust because it didn't even scratch the surface to the problem that I had on the inside.
You didn't find what you was looking for.
No.
So you got to that place in the top, and you're like,
yeah,
there's nothing here, man.
No, nothing.
So
I was very disappointed.
Is that where the thoughts of suicide begin, or?
Yes. So that would have been the second time. The first time was probably my freshman year.
Okay.
So it was my freshman year in high school, going through some things. So I overdosed on pills at that time there. And then out of that, they take...
Intentionally, you try to kill yourself. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So they take me to Santa Rosa Hospital. They pump my stomach there. They released me to my grandparents. They had to take me out. And then from there, they take me to some youth mental place. They're off of Babcock Road and things.
Let me stop you there. So you're about to take all these pills. What are you thinking? What's going on in your head and your heart up to where you grab the pills, you're taking them? What's happening? Tell me. Explain what you're thinking.
For someone that was, 14, 15, a freshman in high school, I was already tired. I was already tired of life, and I haven't even started living yet when you look at it.
So explain tired of life.
Tired of life in the sense having issues of not knowing who my biological father is going to be.
So real quick, I always tell Casey this. Notice how it always comes back to the father.
It always comes back to the dad.
It always comes back to the father. Like, from a whole different perspective, and this is for our viewers.
Yeah.
Because you're going to see this trend. For all our viewers, look, here is this man, this young man, burdened, consumed, suicidal, and the root of everything he's become since a child is, I don't know who my father is. Think about that, man. I don't know if people grasp that, because it seems to be the common thread in everything we deal with is the fact that the father is not there. So keep explaining. So you're in high school, you don't know who your father is.
Don't know who he is. And then, of course, just different things that would be said in school, with your friends, they're mocking, picking on you, and just things like that. So at that point, it's like, you know what? That's one of the reasons why I encourage people to witness to people. And so during my revivals, when I do my testimony, I show my mugshot. We'll get into that later, but that is what a person without hope looks like. So I'm a freshman, sophomore in high school, nobody's witnessed to me up until this point. So to keep going through the same things over and over and not knowing what's, where's the hope at all, like, you know what, why go through all this? Just end it now.
Yeah. So that's what you're thinking up to when you take those pills, that first attempt of suicide.
Yes.
So what happens? You take the pills and what happens there?
My friend Joe came to see how I was doing. He just happened, we lived in the same neighborhood, whatnot, and then he sees that I'm not looking too good. So he calls 911. The paramedics get there. They take me to Santa Rosa. They get a hold of my grandparents. They meet me there, and so they end up pumping my stomach.
What did your grandparents say?
I mean,
were they devastated?
Yeah, they were. And now as a father and as a grandfather, I can't even imagine the pain that I put them through when I did that, because they had already adopted me, raised me as their own. And, a lot of it too is because there's no communication. And what I mean by that is I felt I couldn't talk to them because they were much older than my parents would have been.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now looking back, if I would have listened to them, right, because they were older, that means they're speaking with wisdom.
Correct.
So yeah, that's the thing there.
So you could have benefited from their input.
Yes, if
you had that mindset.
Right. If I could do it all over again, I would have.
And so you get through that, and then you attempt suicide again.
Yes, this is probably after my sophomore year, maybe between sophomore and junior year. There I'm at, there in my apartment, third floor, ended up cutting my wrist. And so, we got that taken care of pretty much, but the same mindset pretty much.
So both times were when you were when you were in high school?
Yes.
So that must have been a pretty traumatic part of your life?
Well, I mean, the two times that I tried it there, so you're playing football, right? You're playing football. You're somewhat popular there. You're starting to become a pharmaceutical representative. You're selling things, but it's not even scratching the surface to the problem that's in my heart, which is sin at the time.
So where does the selling drugs come in?
I want to say probably my junior year in high school. My junior year, I was working at Pizza Hut there on McMullen in Commerce. I would deliver pizzas, but I would deliver other products as well, and
Parmesan cheese.
and they would say, hey, I'd get back and they'd say, hey, it's taking you too long to deliver the pizza. I said, hey, I couldn't see the address, so I had to look for it. But that's how I got into it.
Okay. And how long did that go for? I mean, up to the point where you ended up busted.
Yeah. So that would have been
It's pretty sly, though.
92.
Okay.
Yeah, because I remember I turned 18 on February 3rd, and then on Valentine's Day, that's when they went and pulled me out of class.
Is that were you pushing major weight or just kind of small time?
No, not nothing major, just small time, yeah.
And so what happened that led to you getting busted or what?
Snitches.
Snitches get stitches.
6'9".
Yeah, and I should have listened to my friend Joe, so we were real tight. He was always with me, so he knew everything we were doing. And so we're in the cafeteria there in breakfast time. And so this guy wanted some stuff. And then so Joe tells me, he goes, hey, I wouldn't give him that. He goes, that's too much for him. He never buys that much. I said, no. Remember I said I had severe inoleitis. Yeah. No, it'll be all right. And so I gave him what he wanted. And I should have listened to Joe. He said, that's too much for him. And so it wasn't too long after that, they went and put me out of second period.
So
And
what was that process then?
That process, as far as like being in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean,
So I'm and here's the irony of it is, Joe's with me in class. We're there in math, and he's sitting right next to me. He had literally just snorted a line of coke on his desk, and that's when the cops walked in. So the cops walk in, the detective. I was like, oh man, they're gonna get Joe, man, because he just did a line. And no, they went around Joe. They came and got me by the arm. They got my backpack, and then the principal went and told Mr. Jackson, we're going to take Mr. Valerio with us. They escort me all the way to the principal's office. The main detective is there. And he said, the first words out of his mouth, he said, just tell me where you have the dime. He goes, I know you have it. And so at that moment, out of all the kids that are in our high school, only one kid knew how much I had left. And so I already knew where he got the info from. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And so they go through my stuff, and eventually they find a little dime bag. The cool part, I guess, is you should have seen the escort when they were taking me to the police car. You know, it's like, behave, man.
What were they doing?
It's just, I mean, it's good for street creds, right? But, you know, it's like I'm some big timer or something like El Chapo or something. Now, on the inside, it's like, what's going to become of me?
Yeah.
You know, and so the police officer that drove me to Bexar County, he was real nice. You know, man, you shouldn't be doing drugs and this and that. But I really wasn't doing it as much as I was selling it. But I said, okay, yeah, okay, I understand. Thank you. And so forth.
So I've seen your mugshot, which I don't know if we're going to be able to put it in here for the podcast. I'm looking at the producer. He's nodding yes.
Okay.
And so we might be able to put your podcast in, I mean, your thing in there for the podcast. But what are you thinking, you know, as they're taking your picture?
Was you thinking like, man, my world is over?
Well, I was wanting it to be over, you know, living that lifestyle. You know, there's a lot of compromising situations. You see a lot of things you shouldn't see. The one where I knew it's like, yeah, I'm done. I can't be doing this no more. So the guy that I would get my stuff from, he had fronted some lady some stuff, and so she hadn't paid up. So we were going to go, you know, and talk to her. You know, let me talk to you for a minute, you know. And so we happened to go, and at that time, my grandmother was still cleaning houses. And so we end up going. I said, man, I think I know where we're going. And so we pull up on the street where my grandmother's cleaning a house. And so we're like about 4 houses away from where my grandmother's cleaning. And so we're at this lady's house, and she's coming up with excuses, right? You know, I'm going to get your money and all that. And so this dude's going to, you know, take care of business, and a little girl comes running out. And so I call him by his name. I say, hey, don't worry about it. We'll talk to her later. Let's get out of here, man. You know, she's got a little girl. But I didn't tell him that my grandmother's working like 2-3 houses up the street there. And so when that happened, when he was, you know, that was going to go down, that's why I said, yeah, I can't be doing this.
Does this inform me?
Yeah.
So by the grace of God, someone tells you about Jesus. Where does Jesus come into the picture here?
Jesus comes in. So I get bonded out on a PR. You know, I promised that I would show up to court, first offense. And I started working at a hotel on 410, and there were 2 guys there. You know, Monday morning, they're happy, they're jittery, talking about outreach and whatever. And so I used to get mad because you're hungover, you're trying to recuperate. And so, you know, they would witness, you need to come to church. Why do I have to go to your church to get drunk? I'm already doing that on my own. And then they would tell me, you don't need a religion, you need a relationship with Jesus. They didn't tell me a lot of things, but with the little that they did tell me would stay with me. You know, you'd be doing something and those words kept coming up and coming up. So they were the ones that invested time in witnessing to me. And I say that because I was mean to them. I would cuss them out and things like that. And so by the grace of God, they were really saved, and they didn't.
And they
how
still
old were
kept
you?
trying?
Yeah.
How old were
That's
you at this
cool.
point?
I want to say about 19.
Okay. And were you already with your wife?
At the time, she was my girlfriend.
Okay.
She was my girlfriend. I was selling dope to her older brother and his boss. She only knew I delivered pizzas for Pizza Hut. She didn't know about my pharmaceutical representative endeavors, you know.
So where did the witnessing come to a point where it's like, okay, I'm gonna go to church or
Well, they were inviting me to a revival. They were having a revival with Seraphico Saavedra. And they had told me about it, but I didn't commit. I said, okay, we'll see what happens. But I was already down and out, right? And so in addition to that, our senior year in high school, I had a close friend of mine that had died in a diving accident there at Woodlawn Lake.
Which I was going to talk about that. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. We'll talk about that after this.
Okay. And so, you know, we're there. And then so I didn't tell them I was going to go to the revival. I just show up. And I sit in the back. That way, if I don't like what they're talking about, I can just walk out. Yeah. But the way he was preaching, I hadn't seen that in the Catholic Church. The way he was yelling in the preaching and things like that. I was like, wow. So he does the altar call. I don't go up there. And then he starts praying for the sick. They get healed. They pray for the Holy Ghost. They get filled. They start speaking in tongues. And it was cool for me. It was new to me.
Yeah.
But when he was done praying for the Holy Ghost, he points to me in the back. He goes, come here, homie. And so I know I'm the last one in the back. So I turn around. He goes, you the one that just turned around in the purple shirt. He goes, come here. And as I'm going up to the platform, he starts reading my life. You're upset at God for a death of a friend and just things like that. And he goes, listen, God's going to help you. And so he prays for me, things like that. On the way out of the church, the speaking in tongues, I didn't care about that. People getting healed. What got me was, how did he know my business?
Yeah.
Because I would go back to Woodlawn Lake, be there till like 3 a.m, getting wasted, whatever, where the accident happened. And God, I was already suicidal. Why not me? Why him? Just different things like that.
What happened with your friend? I remember you said that was a big issue in your life.
Yeah. So what happened was I was DJing a Valentine's dance at the high school, our high school, right?
So you used to be a DJ.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I'm DJing the Valentine's dance there, and then when we were done, I'm loading up my equipment. Something told me invite him to go eat, right? And so I got busy and I didn't. So he leaves with the rest of our friends, and I didn't hear anything else. And so at the time, I'm a supervisor at a theater at River Center Mall, and so they call me and he goes, "Hey, I don't know if you got the news already, but Terry passed away." I said, "When?" He goes, "Just right now." And I said, "Oh man," I said, "Where you at?" And he goes, "The hospital." I said, "Okay." Told my employer, I got to go. And so what happened was, when I couldn't find them, they had already left. They changed clothes. They went to Woodlawn Lake. And from what I've heard, they were already doing some kind of drinking. So when they get to Woodlawn Lake, he just takes off running. You're not going to catch him. Dives in there, and it was shallow right where he dove in. So he dives in, breaks his neck. And well, he's on life support a couple of days. And so I took that hard, so he had a few colleges looking at him, for a scholarship, things like that as well. But that's why my beef was with God. Why not me? I'm already suicidal. Why him?
Yeah.
And so for Sarafico to call me like that and not even know me, that's what drew me more to the, like, how did he know my business?
And so you left, and you're just thinking like, whoa, what is this? Like, this has to be God.
I knew it was something supernatural, because it's almost like, as I'm there getting drunk and high and all that at Woodlawn Lake where the accident happened, nobody else was in the car.
Yeah.
And so for him to know details, like nobody in the church knew my story.
Yeah.
That's what kept me coming back, was the supernatural.
So you went to church that one night. And then what, you just said, I'm going to church on Sunday too, or?
No, I was hit and miss. I wasn't going like every service, because it was new to me. Speaking in tongues and all that was new to me. And then Rachel, being my girlfriend at the time, she was having a big issue with me going to church a lot. Like, you're always at the church. Why don't you just marry the pastor and all these different things? But at that time, she didn't know all the mess that was on the inside.
Correct.
Right. And then so she would find out, when I got popped for the drug things and stuff like that. But she didn't know the rest of the stuff that was in there.
Did you feel like maybe I should give this spiritual thing a try?
Yeah. I mean, there was something in there that said, man, I need to go back. And so when she would get mad, like, no, I don't want you to go to church, stay here, whatever. And no, I would go, because I was already tired of everything I had done, people I had hurt, and she didn't understand that part. But on the flip side to that, and so we'll talk about it later. We were pastoring. Some of the ladies in the church were talking with her, and about what we're talking about right now. And she said, but the only reason I'm saved today is because when we were just boyfriend and girlfriend, I would tell him not to go to church, and he would still go without me. So if I had caved in and not gone, we wouldn't be together right now.
And so,
that's powerful.
People go to church all the time. They get invited. They hear a witness. They come to church. What was the pivotal point from you just being a church goer, guy that went to church, to where it's like, okay, to where it led you to where you're at today?
The decision I made just to cut my friends loose, just like that, just cut them loose, no more. Because, so we're in our late 40s now, and they're still doing the same things we were doing when we were 17 and 18. Mm-hmm. So you can almost prophesy. You can tell their story. They're going to be doing this at this time. We can go, in their neighborhood at this time, and they're going to be doing the same thing. So for me, it's like, I don't want to do this, until I'm in my 40s. I said, so let me go to church. And one of the brothers was the one that encouraged me. He goes, listen, I know you have the court case pending and things like that. He goes, but let me challenge you. Come to church for 6 months, right? Come Sunday morning, Sunday night, come on Wednesdays, right? If you don't have to work, be here. And then after 6 months, you tell me what God has done in your life. 6 months goes by, and then so we're in church, and he asked me, and he goes, so what did God do for you? So not saved and not knowing. I said, he hasn't done anything for me yet. And he goes, that's not true, Rich. He goes, how many times did they postpone your court date? I said 3 times. He goes, you see, Rich, that's a miracle right there. So God's helping you. I didn't see it at the time, but when he explained that, I said, you know what, you're right. So by the time I went to court, my attorney was able to say, well, you know, he's working a job to help support their, you know, his daughter. He's going to school for computer-aided drafting and things like that. So instead of getting the 20-year sentence on the possession charge, they gave me 9 years probation, and I was done in 3.
Praise God.
Praise God. And so
That's like unheard of.
Come on, somebody.
where does the transition happen from that to discipleship?
They were talking about conference, right? You know, like when you fight, right? They got to build up the main event fights and things like that. So conference for me was like a main event. Oh, if you haven't been to a conference, you need to go to a conference and this and that. And so I would sell whatever I had to, you know, air conditioning tools, whatever, go to conference. We'd go to the first conference I went to was what sealed the deal. To see like 3,000 people under one tent from different nations, and then in the church to hear, you know, we're reaching the world. But to
What year was this? What year was this?
I want to say like 93, 94.
Dang, dude, really?
You know, and to go to my first conference there, and so there's people from other nations, the pastors from nations that are preaching there, and to hear the testimonies of how God is moving in their nations, right? Especially from missionaries that we've sent out. When I heard that at the conference, that was I'm in. We're not just talking about it. We're doing it.
You wanted that?
Yeah. I said, I want in on this. You can ask
Praise
Rachel.
God.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'd go
that's
to
awesome.
conference with, they say, you can go to conference, but it's going to be without pay. Okay, I'll see you when I get back.
Yeah.
And let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, praise God.
So I mean, you know, what's your perspective? I mean, as you're like, I want to do this. Like, what's your perspective? What are you thinking? What is your motivation? Like, what is it? I mean, what is that's driving you?
In other words, so I'm understanding that the devil's playing me, right? He's been playing me all this time. So if I can't get him on the main event inside the squared circle or whatever, you know what? At least I can give to those who are going. But the thoughts would come out, or, you know, I would voice it. God, if you can ever use my life, you know, I'm in. You know, you just let me know when, where, things like that.
Cool beans. I remember.
That's powerful.
I
Never
mean,
thought of it like
I
that.
remember like years. I remember years ago when I was a new convert, man. Like, you know, seeing you out there doing whatever, you know, you were doing in the church and stuff. And I didn't really have a concept of anything back then. You know, I was such a new convert. And, you know, but, you know, I remember that as I began to grow, you know, and then I saw your ministry, you know, begin to develop and stuff. And then, you know, like, just, you know, and me and you talk about this all the time, you know, but it's like now here you are, an international evangelist.
Praise God.
I mean, preaching all over the world. How does that compute to like back then to now to be like, what the heck?
The words that we speak.
Yeah.
You know, 5 a.m, I'm on a plane tomorrow, you know, so I'll be out. But and we were speaking about it earlier. And I think I mentioned it too, that I spoke to your dad when he was helping me with the AC. The words that we spoke at that coffee house have come to pass.
Yeah.
You were going to be a full-time pastor. I was going to be a full-time evangelist. It happened.
And this is, and you know, me and Richie always talk about this. We always remind ourselves of this. But you have to understand something. Like back then, there was nothing to say it was going to happen. Like there was nothing to say, yeah, we're on our way. It was just talk.
And coffee.
So y'all just reached out and grabbed it.
It was just talk.
Took it.
And it was a vision. It was, and like you would say, like one day I'm preacher on the world, and I'd be like, yeah, man, dude, that's powerful, bro. Like that's awesome. One day I want to do this, and we're like, yeah. But there was nothing to say what's gonna happen.
There was nothing.
And you know, from my perspective here, you know, and then seeing you get launched out into Aransas Pass, and then, you know, the years that were there, and, you know, we would go and help you outreach, and then, you know, I start pioneering, and then, you know, you go into the evangelistic field, and then now it's like, you know, Richie Valerio is like it's a household name now, you know. Evangelist Richie Valerio, who does not know Evangelist Richie Valerio, and to you go back, and you were just this kid that was almost not born.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it
I'm
is.
grateful for your messages. I've heard you preach a few
There it
times,
is.
and you're actually one of my favorites.
So I mean, I just think
it's powerful.
I think it's just to think a bit from that dynamic, almost not born, to by the grace of God you're given a chance at life, and then here you are, however old you are now reaching the world, things that people only talk about.
And the miracles keep coming.
And the miracles, and you do have a website, right?
RichardValerio.com.
If you want to go to his website, richvalerio.com, you
I
can
wanna
see
go to it.
all the miracles that God has done through his ministry. I'm talking about real miracles. Like, I'm talking about real, verified, doctor's notes, pregnancies that were not possible. You can go see that all on his website. And know that God's real and God's true, man. And it goes to show how God can do great things through our lives, And one of the things I do at the end of our interviews, Richie, is there anything else you want to talk about?
If you would have told me 27 years ago, Richie, I know you have a court case pending, etc. In 27 years, you're going to be preaching around the world, the prisons, juvenile detention centers. You're going to be praying for people that the doctors say we can't do anything for you. They're going to be healed. Couples can't have babies. You're going to pray for them. They're going to come out pregnant. People that need financial miracles, you're going to pray for them, and I'm going to move supernaturally in their finances. If you would have told me that 27 years ago, I would have said, you're crazy. But just simply making a decision, my friends are doing something for God. I know how this is going to play out. That it never changes.
No.
So you know what? I'm all in for God. And so I believe because of my decision to cut my old friends and just stay committed to the things of God, we see this play out.
And if there was one thing you can tell to that young kid that you used to be, that's hopefully watching out there. He's young, doesn't know his father. He's frustrated, suicidal. What would you tell that person, that young lady, that young kid, young man? What would you tell him now to encourage him to not to give up, to push forward?
Yes, what I would recommend is don't give up. Right where you're at, whether you're in your living room or at your job, begin to talk to God. Ask God to forgive you of your sins and give your heart to God. And once you've done that, I would encourage you to come down to the Potter's House Christian Center or the church here and let God begin to help you change your life. And God is my witness. As I'm 48 years old now, my old friends that are still alive, some I see in prison. When I go preach in prison, I see them there. Some have died, but the ones that are still alive, we're in our late 40s and they're still doing things we were doing when we were 17 and 18. So I would highly recommend, listen, doesn't matter what you've done. If you're honest with God, talk to God from your heart. Let him know the areas that you need help in and ask God to forgive you of your sins, and God will rock your world. Think about this, right? Think about this. 27 years ago, I gave my life to Christ. I preach around the world. So that's a blessing. But to be able to go and visit the Pentagon and the White House, I never would have seen that coming. I never even would have thought that. And that just goes to show you that God is not there waiting to just send you straight to hell or anything like that. No. God is waiting for you to cry out to him so he can give you that new life that you're looking for.
Amen.
Awesome. And so another powerful testimony. And I mean, it just, the reason why we do these podcasts is because we want people to understand that there's hope, man, that there's help. And everyone that's ever received anything from God, from Jesus, their life transformation, I mean, they all come from all different backgrounds of life.
Come on.
They come from all different, none of them are the same in any way. And it just goes to prove that it doesn't matter where you're at, where you come from, where you've been, like there is hope for you in Jesus. And, as we conclude this episode tonight, I want to encourage people out there watching, man, let someone know that there's hope. show them these videos, show them these,
Yes.
share this podcast so that we can, what if you can touch one life? I mean, we understand suicides, we understand, how things happen in the world. What if we can change one life, help one life, reach one person, and say, you know what, your life doesn't have to be what it is. It can be different. And you can do that through this podcast, and that's the hope, is that someone gets touched, someone gets reached through this. And so we're gonna go ahead and finish off the episode here. I want to thank you for viewing, for being a part of it. Thank you, Pastor Richie, for being here with us and sharing your testimony. And so I am your host, Luis Perez, a.k.a. Huicho Breach, and if you know that Demon Killer with my co-host
Casey Case, your favorite Tennessee representative.
And we're checking out. See ya.
Peace.
Peace.